Hello, Void Dwellers. Since I moved to the UK 6 years ago, many people ask me why. Why would I leave Israel? And there were several reasons, but the biggest and most important one was the political atmosphere in Israel. After being a political activist for about 20 years and seeing every single aspect of political life in Israel becoming worse and deteriorating, I felt very disconnected from the country. Of course, like many of us, the 7th of October and the reminder of just how anti-Semitic the West still is brought me back closer to the country. But all it takes is a small political chat with any random Israeli, and I immediately get this familiar headache that I used to get all the time. All the time. Now, before I give you the poll results that were shown today in Israeli media, let me give you a little background about the political system in Israel. Israel is not divided into states or constituencies. It's far too small for that. Instead, Israelis vote for a party. Israel's parliament is called the Knesset and it has 120 seats. Those seats are divided between the different parties according to how many people voted. But a party has to have at least 61 seats to become a ruling government. And that has never happened in the 75 years of history of the country. Every single government in the history of Israel was a coalition government, because Israeli society is very, very fractured. We are all united in our belief in the country itself, in Zionism, in Jewish self-determination and our right to defend ourselves, and all of those core values. But in other things, we basically don't agree on anything. And even within the right and the left, there's not just one party for the right and one party for the left and one for the centrists and one for the religious people. No. In all of those segments, you have multiple parties with very mild differences between them competing with each other for voters. So when you try to predict who is going to be the next prime minister, you don't just look at who is going to be the head of the largest party. You look at who has the most chance of actually getting a coalition going, one that has more than 61 seats. So let me give you the headline, the spoiler of what I'm about to show you. And the headline is that Netanyahu at the moment would not become the prime minister if the elections were held today. But he is recovering and becoming stronger in every poll. Let's look at the details. In this poll, Netanyahu's right-wing party, Likud, is the biggest party with 26 seats. The second biggest is the centrist party led by Benny Gantz with 22 seats. Next is the centrist left party Yesh Atid, which gets 13 seats. The right-wing party Israel Beitenu, headed by Avigdor Lieberman, also gets 13 seats. Shas is the next party, and it is an ultra-religious party for Mizrahi Jews. A very old party. Their leader is Aryeh Deri, a convicted felon who was blocked by the Supreme Court from being appointed a minister in Netanyahu's current government, which is a big part of why Netanyahu tried to have a legal coup. Anyway, they get 10 seats. Then we have the left-wing party, the Democrats. This party has been recently created by people from the Israeli Labor Party and the even farther left party called Meretz. Both parties kind of stopped existing after the last elections, and this is the new party for Israeli Social Democrats. It also gets 10 seats. Then we have the ultra-religious Ashkenazi party, Yahadut HaTorah, which gets 8 seats. Ben Gvir's far-right party gets also 8 seats. The next party is Hadash Ta'al, an Arabic Jewish party on the far left, basically communists, who get 5 seats. And finally, we have Ra'am, an Arab Muslim party dedicated to promoting the rights and interests of Israel's Arab citizens, who also gets 5 seats. Now, there are many more other parties, they just don't get enough seats to be counted. Israeli law dictates that you have to have at least 4 seats in order to pass the minimum limit. So many parties just don't get any seats, and those votes are kind of wasted. For example, Smotrich, who currently is a minister, his far-right party, Hatzionut Hadatit, crashes and burns and stays out of the Knesset in this poll. Now, what does all that mean? It means that in this poll, Benny Gantz, the head of the centrist party, is probably Israel's next prime minister. His party is the second biggest. The centrist left, Yesh Atid, are their natural allies. In fact, they were united until recently. The leftist Democrats are also a natural allies of theirs. That adds 13 seats from Yesh Atid and 10 from the Democrats and places us at 45 seats. Avigdor Lieberman is the head of the right-wing Israel Beitenu, but he hates Netanyahu with a passion. And he has been known to agree to compromise with the centrists, so the assumption is that he would go with that bloc, which places us at 58 seats. With the Arab party Ra'am, who was already a coalition partner in the past, in a government that had a very similar structure to this structure, we can add their 5 seats, and that gives us 63 seats. That is actually not a bad government, in my opinion. It has a lot of moderated people, secular people, democracy believers, and can do a lot of good in Israel. And it keeps Netanyahu, the ultra-religious, and the far-right away from power. But the thing we need to remember that would take away a little bit of this optimism, or all of it, is that Netanyahu is doing better in this poll than he did in the previous ones. So he is getting stronger. And the reason he's getting stronger is Israel's achievements in the war, which is why he has very little interest in ending the war. Even now, when it is clear that Israel has won, Hamas is in ruins, Hezbollah is in ruins, their leaders are dead, Iran is deterred, Israel is in a good place. A hostages deal in exchange to ending the war would be the ideal next move from the betterment of the country's point of view, but not from Netanyahu's political career's point of view. Just to be fair, I also should point out that Hamas as well, whatever is left of them, they are also hardening their position and demanding things that Israel just cannot accept, especially not since we are already won. But also Netanyahu would not go for such a deal at this point. See, prime ministers in Israel tend to become stronger during times of war and then very weak right after when the dust settles. So he doesn't really have an interest to end this war. There is also another scenario. If Naftali Bennett, a hardliner right-winger who was prime minister briefly a few years back and retired from politics, if he comes back, he takes 21 seats. In that scenario, he can join Netanyahu and the ultra-religious parties to create a coalition of 61 seats. It's an uncomfortable situation where everybody has the power to break the government, but Netanyahu is a survivor. He'll take it. However, I believe Bennett would demand to have a rotation between them regarding the seat of the prime minister. And since Netanyahu is a known liar and Bennett is not stupid, he'll demand to be the first. So we might end up with 2 years of Bennett as prime minister in a conservative, religious, and a very hardliner government, which is bad, and then 2 years of Netanyahu, which is worse. So I'm not optimistic. I fear the ideal government is not in Israel's future. But that brings me back to the reason I left. As much as I love Israel, Israelis are just so fucking stupid when it comes to politics. And they've always been this way. Under Netanyahu, we suffered the worst disaster in modern history since the founding of the country, and he still gets 26 seats. That means there are literally 1 million people in Israel that prefer this lying, incompetent criminal in power rather than all the others. And that's where it really gets me. I am not even talking right or left here. There are other options on the right. I thought Bennett would crush Netanyahu if he comes back, because he is not a criminal. There are no criminal cases against him. There are 4 against Netanyahu right now. He wasn't in charge during the worst terror attack in the history of the country, and yet Netanyahu brings more seats than he does. That is how fucking stupid Israelis are when it comes to politics. And I've seen it throughout my life. There's no reasoning with them. There's no logic there. Israelis treat politics emotionally and nothing more. The brain just doesn't function. The people who love Netanyahu, they just love him. That's it. Nothing would change that. He can be caught on tape killing a puppy, and they'll be like, well, the puppy was a leftist communist, he deserved it. It's unbelievable. And if you really want to know how fucking stupid Israelis are when it comes to politics, all you need to know is the next result from the poll. If Israel was part of the United States, it would have been the most Republican state in existence, redder than red, because 66% of Israelis support Mr. Donald, they're eating the pets, some states legalized abortion after birth because of the leftist I am a stable genius fucking Trump. And only 17% support the woman with an actual brain that can form a consistent thought. And oh, there it is, the headache I was talking about. Hello darkness, my old friend.